Welcome to the Parent Equation podcast with me, Aisha Murray. This podcast series is full of inspiring stories from working parents who are passionate about designing a life that works for them and their families. Working parents like you who want a purposeful, rewarding career alongside a balanced family life. So today on the Parent Equation, and with our topic of portfolio careers, I am joined by Lee Witherell. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning, Aisha.
Lee is a working parent, grown-up kids now. So you're sort of coming out of the end, but you're not really, because they're just boomeranging back.
Yes, you never finishes, but yes, in theory.
In theory. And you have had, well, you are now in, I suppose, what we describe as a portfolio career situation.
Yes.
Having had a long, successful career in the past. So what would be great, I think, to kick off with, Lee, is could you give us some context as to how have you got to where you are now when it comes to portfolio career? What was the journey you've been on?
What was the journey and what was the impetus? So there's two phases to my portfolio career. So the first, and both prompted by redundancies. So the first was I was working for a big data services company up until about 2004, and they went through a redundancy process, and I took advantage of that and left and started. So it was more starting my own thing rather than portfolio at that stage, but that sort of got me in the mind of the freelancer and doing different projects, different gigs. So I didn't do the classic sort of IT freelancer where you go and work with one company. So you're more or less an employee, but at a massive day rate. I was much lower day rates than IT contractors, but also I was doing lots of different projects, either concurrently or one after the other. But then I dipped back into the world of full-time permanent employment, and actually, again, that was pretty interesting because that was prompted by the needs of being a parent. So I actually wanted more security. I thought, look, my kids at that stage were still both quite young, and I wanted that security of getting paid for your holidays, for having, sickness cover, that sort of pension being paid. But then the next jolt back into the world of initially sort of consultancy stroke freelancing, but then a proper portfolio career was another redundancy at the end of 2016, where I tried going back into proper, in inverted commas, work. It didn't work out. So I thought, look, I've been a consultant, I've been a freelancer before, I'll do that again. And again, I was very lucky in that I did get a real good mix of projects. I wouldn't exactly call it churn. It was revolving. I managed to keep that work going and going and going, but with different clients, with different marketing agencies, advertising agencies, different sectors. Really, really interesting. And then I got to 2020. So it was just before the pandemic. And I'd always been interested in fitness and in being and partaking in fitness, not necessarily sport per se, but sort of fitness. And I've been doing that for quite a while, or getting my fitness up for quite a while. And I thought, actually, I quite like the element. I like what I see these people doing, the way they work, the instructors. So I did a qualification as a PT, qualified, and then started looking for work as really as a side hustle. Just before the pandemic struck, which actually wasn't that much of a blow to my burgeoning career as a PT, because I started doing stuff online. So there was another element here that more people were doing everything online, so working online, but also working out online. So that sort of took off. And at the same time, I was still doing some work in the field, the field of data and analysis and marketing that I'd always been in. But it became, and again, because of the slowdown with COVID and there being sort of less of that work, I've sort of managed to, that's when I started building that portfolio career. And that, I kept that going for a couple of years. And I've beefed up the PT side of it, which is really good, but still having to rely on I would say my proper work to actually sort of bringing income. And I think that's what you find when you talk to a lot of people who have side hustles. It's very rare, or it's rarer that you can make a full-time go of it. or it takes longer to do that because you have to devote time around your traditional normal work. And usually often again, as with me, redundancy can be actually the primer or the kickstart to that, because it gives you the time back, but it can often give you a lump of cash to sort of keep going. So the next development on that, which really sort of prompted me into what I would now say is more of a real sort of portfolio. The sort of the current cost of living crisis and the sort of downturn, and it is a bit of a downturn in our marketplace of what I do, sort of data analysis marketing, which was early on this year. So about May this year, a contract I was working on had finished. So I was still doing that combination of normal data analytics marketing work and PT on the side. Contract came to a finish. I went on holiday. When I came back, the market seemed to have died. I couldn't find any work. And it was interesting because looking on LinkedIn, I started seeing something that I'd never seen before, which is people really explicitly reaching out and saying, not just saying, I'm open to work and I'm looking, you share this with your contacts, or I'm reaching my contact base, but actually coming up with telling you their story of, I have been unemployed now for 3, 4, 5 months, whatever. So really some sad, concerning stories about that. And the market is always cyclical, as all markets always are. And I think it may well be picking up now, but it seemed to be a particular thing. So I was in a similar situation. I was running out of money. So quite genuinely running out of money. So my daughter, so still doing the PT, but again, like I say, you can't at the moment, couldn't make a complete living out of that. So my daughter, who is has just qualified as a sound and video engineer, said to me, why don't you get in contact with one of these sort of crewing or rigging companies that take on people almost like a 0 hours contract, but they're always looking for people who've got a work ethic, don't mind working odd hours, and you basically work on festivals, gigs, corporate events, theatre shows, but you basically lump gear around and then set it up. So it's like being a roadie, but it's slightly more technical, and not everyone's got long hair and listens to heavy metal, but there's still a lot of people like that. But not everyone. So I thought, well, I might as well, because the one thing I was, as opposed to quite often in the past where I'd been cash rich but time poor, I was now cash poor but time rich. So I went online, signed up for one of these. They invited me in, had a training day, and then I got stuck into it. So that was where. So I'd now had, or at that time, it was a sort of two-phase, or sort of two-strand portfolio career of the PTing and this very blue-collar manual work that I hadn't done for years and years and years, which I was now going back into. So that's where it got to. And interestingly enough, so now, this is sort of the ironic thing. Now I've gone back into my traditional world of work. So I put that aside for the moment because PTing is still ongoing, but now the market does seem to have picked up. So I've picked up some projects and I'm working on those. But it was a really interesting interlude because I met a load of people who, some of them did it as a portfolio career as well. A lot of them, that was just what they did. Mostly younger guys, quite flexible, quite laid back, quite a different attitude to a different way of living and working to what you'd see in an office. And that was quite refreshing. It was an eye-opener again, because it sort of took me back to being a sort of a much younger blue-collar man. But it was eye-opening and also really quite inspiration in some ways, because they really did. You got to a sort of very base level of teamwork. Or so I say base level. So working as a team in a job like that is really important, because if you turn up and there's 6 of you and you have to set up a gig and you have to do it in a set amount of time, or you have to de-rig, take down a gig, and again, wherever that venue is, they want you out as quickly as possible. You can't have slackers. So you can. I know in the office environment, it's difficult to slack. So I'm not saying people in offices are slackers, but it's very, very noticeable. And also the way that company worked was that so they would offer you a job. You didn't have to take the jobs. They had an app, and they would offer you, say, do you want to work at, let's say, the BBC studios in Maida Vale, for want of a better example, which I did a couple of gigs there, and it might be helping the one of the proms orchestras set up for a rehearsal for the proms. You could take it, or you didn't have to take it. But if you did take it and you turned up, you needed to turn up, because if they're expecting, let's say, 4 of you and only 3 turn up, they've all got to do 25-30% extra work. And if you turn up but you slack, again, you're putting pressure on them. So there was a very real sense of pride in them in terms of what they did, because actually there's a lot of skill in setting these things up. There's a lot of skill even in packing a lorry with flight cases full of really expensive audio and video kit, doing it in a way that you can fill that lorry so they don't need to rent another lorry, but also so you don't break anything. It sounds really obvious, but so it was interesting. You saw these I call them kids, these young, and mainly there were a few girls on there, which was interesting as well. Mainly young guys who were quite. You might look at them in the street and think, look a bit like slackers, but actually, once they got working, they're really, really focused and dedicated. So that's the point. So over this summer, I sort of had this 2-strand portfolio career, but it took me in a direction that I wasn't really expecting to go. And now it's back to another 2-strand sort of side hustle portfolio career. But I'm trying to beef up the PT side of it. But the thing, I now know that if I needed to, I could go back and do something like that. I might not want to, but it's always there. And it's interesting because I've seen also on LinkedIn, I've seen not too many, but I've seen a few instances with people I know or sort of their colleagues of colleagues who've been sort of in, let's say, software sales, or they've been on the data infrastructure side or areas like that. And they're now doing something, they're working in Homebase, or they're selling double base or something. And again, they've gone through the same thing, but they've almost found themselves through doing that, because in most cases they're quite honest. It's not the remuneration or the lifestyle they were once used to, but the job satisfaction in some instances is more. It's increased because they've simplified it.
So what have you learned about yourself then through that process?
That's a really good question. So I think I've learned that you have to be, you have to be flexible, and I was able to be flexible. So I wasn't sort of sitting there thinking, it wasn't quite Norman Tebbit, get on your bike, but it was almost like, well, I've got to do something. And there was an element, I've got to earn money, but I don't want to be sitting around the house. So I learned that. I've learned about sort of tolerance in some respect, or at least an empathy with people that I normally wouldn't be associating with. Although they're probably very much like, I came from a sort of blue-collar working class background, but since I've left university, I would have seen less, and would have associated less and less people like that. Sounds very Marie Antoinette, doesn't it? And wouldn't mix with these people normally. So I think it's sort of flexibility and empathy, and also just that value of doing a good job, because it doesn't matter. That's quite a big thing, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. You need to do it well, whatever it is you're doing. So you could be working on a digital transformation project for a massive FMCG company, which is partially something I'm working on at the moment. But you could also just be taking down or moving a pop-up, moving a set within a museum for an events company. Both of those jobs, if you're going to do them, do them well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like I'm almost tempted to rebrand portfolio career. Maybe it is already out there, and I didn't know about it. The kaleidoscope career, because it feels like when you've talked about your two strands, so I suppose you twisted your kaleidoscope lens, and you had the event stuff and the PT. You're twisting it again now, and you've gone back to the PT and the marketing. Perhaps, who knows, next month or next year, again, it twists and there's something else sort of comes into the mix. It feels like you're kind of almost the ability to have options in that portfolio,
Yes.
and to pull on different things when you need them, it feels like then in some ways that could give you more security because you've got options then.
That's a really good way. It's really interesting because when I look at it in terms of how you move forward from it, that's the one thing. As I was sort of thinking, oh God, am I going to be shifting and lifting furniture and setware until I'm sort of 65 and it just kills me? But you're right, it does actually having options, and I think that the difference, I suppose, the difference is having control over it. So if it's a case of you have to do a number of things because you don't have control over what you're doing, or I'm doing a number of things because actually I want the variety.
Yep.
And that's the great position. I don't know if I'm in that position, but that is the great position, or that is a great position to be in. I think a lot of people would like to have a side hustle or something that they enjoy that they could do and again, at the end of the day, you have to make you have to make a living out of it, but if you enjoy it. So yeah, that's a really interesting point, that control. And also I do like variety. I think I always would have liked to have had, or back in the past, thinking forward, probably would have loved if someone had said to me like 15 years ago, you could have a portfolio. I say, yeah, great, as long as it brings in the income. And that would be wonderful. And I think people in the US are a bit more. It's certainly in other countries, but the US sticks out. Are a bit more like that. So there'll be like they'll do like say their main job, but they'll sort of do networking sales, or there'll be a real estate agent. That's the thing. I mean, I think the ideal one is you get the guys in France who are mountain guides in the summer, and then they're ski. Instructors in the winter. I mean, that is a very rarefied example of it, but it's that's the other. And I wish more people could do that, because I think that would probably, in a bizarre way, it probably gives you that break from the normal world of work, probably gets you infused to go back to it, to take something back to it. So there are certainly, again, that sort of that empathy, flexibility, hard work, that can be applied to anything. They are very transferable skills.
Yeah, most of them are. And I think it's having that, knowing you have options, or knowing you can control the options and sort of again tweak them. I think your example would give you hopefully a stronger sense of resilience, so that when you are potentially faced, maybe not, but if you were, with another situation where you think, right, I need to be earning some money somewhere, you've done it now. You know that there are options. You know that there are things you can bring in, and completely different avenues that you can explore as the rigging was. So I suppose what I'm learning from there, this is your daughter's idea, go and try that, you never know, is actually for all of us just to be more open to anything that potentially come our way. It doesn't have to fit into the box that we're used to for 20 years of our career.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, we just never know where it might go, because with the rise of AI, this is really interesting. So a lot of jobs, commentators are predicting will fall by the wayside. They will be done by computers. They will be done by AI. Now, interesting, because I work with a lot of advertising agencies. They've actually embraced that. So the first thing I thought was copywriters would be out of a job, because you just pump it in. You get some account manager, a suit, as they call them, will just say, okay, we need it. We need the message to say this. Put it into ChatGPT, and boom, it comes out. Actually, a lot of them have embraced it, and they use it as a tool. Yeah. So they generate the original ideas, and even sort of creating video and audio, they'll use AI to do that. But you're absolutely right. We don't know, or we do sort of know where technology is going, but we don't know exactly where it's going to go, or just situations like the cost of living crisis, the next pandemic. So that flexibility does give you a certain resilience. So I'm still not concerned. I'm still, obviously, I need to plan and think about the future, but there is, it's a really good way of putting it. You can turn and say, well, I did that. I know I can do something different. And I think that's a great thing for people to pick up on, because everyone can do something different. And just because you've been doing something for the last 20, 30 years doesn't mean that you couldn't switch. You might have to.
Exactly. I think it must rely on, well, if this is to become some kind of nirvana where everyone has a portfolio career which is varied and interesting, and there's lots of different opportunities to earn money in different things, you would hope then that the employment landscape is supportive of that organisations are supportive of their employees potentially wanting to have something on the side. I mean, as a first step, could someone ask for flexible working in order to pursue a side hustle every Friday, for example?
Yeah.
But it's how can the organisations start to support people's need and want to have a more varied career?
That's a really good point. And I think because organisations are now, especially larger organisations, are very switched on to promoting wellness and particularly sort of mental well-being as well as physical well-being and a more flexible work-life balance. Now that could be part of it. So it couldn't, and going back to us being parents, that's always been working for companies where they have been flexible about I need to go and pick up the kids from school, or I need to take one to the doctors, whatever. You're going to be much happier to work harder for a company that supports you in that way. This is somewhat similar because it's about your mental well-being. So if you were to say, I need a day off a week or Friday afternoons to go and pursue this, it's not in direct competition with you. No. It's another way. It might be a revenue earner for me, but it's my side hustle that when I come back on Monday, I'm going to be more enthused. I'm going to bring skills back from that into the workplace. It should only be a benefit to them. And actually, if you think about a practical thing, I know there's been a lot of talk about the sort of the 80-100 or whatever. So you get people to do 80% of the work, they get paid 100%, but they have to do 100%. So it's 80, 100, 100. So the 80% of the time, 100% of the work for 100% of the pay. Employers, if they allowed you to pursue your side hustle, the quid pro quo would be, well, that day you're off, we're not paying it. But that's fine because you're making up the money via your side hustle in your own way. So it should work. It could and should work. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely could and should. And as you say, the transferable skills are not to be underestimated.
No, I know there's a lot of that. I mean, if you think about the old example of it used to be, and it's not a side hustle, it's when you had. So I've got friends who have done this. I never did it. Who'd be in the Territorial Army, and so you'd have to your employer would have to give you 21 days. I think whatever it is per year, and they're always very positive to that because that was a skill. They were leadership skills, resilience, practical skills that you'd come back to the workplace with. But that could be anything. It doesn't have to be the Territorial Army. You could go and volunteer in a hospital, or in a care home or something like that, and that would be so. All that sort of stuff, it could work. It could work really well, and I think employers are the problem. I think employers are more open to it. My only fear is, and this is on the day that it looks like Rishi Sunak pulling back on a lot of the green initiatives because of the cost of living. It's whether employers then sort of bottle it because they're thinking times are tough for everyone, but times are tough in the corporate world as well. We need to screw every last hour, ounce of work, pound out of everybody. But if they're forward thinking, they wouldn't do that because I think they would end up. And again, it goes back to another bigger thing. You would get more productive people. And productivity is a massive issue. And a lot of that, I think, is the various bigger, sort of more systemic reasons, like people, far larger number of people being long-term ill, post-COVID effects, that sort of thing. But there's also probably just motivation. More people that are more highly motivated will be more productive.
Yeah, the majority of my clients come to me, my coaching clients come to me because they're lacking motivation, confidence to carry on with what they've been doing for the last 20 years because being a parent's changed their priorities and their values and everything else. It doesn't actually mean they don't like the role they're doing anymore. It doesn't always mean that. And it's often jumped to a conclusion that I must be in the wrong job. And actually often it's not. It just needs a bit of a repositioning or a recrafting of what that is. And potentially that could also include then something else, some portfolio element to, as you say, reignite that motivation. For work in general.
Exactly. And also it's just talking about the sort of skills transfer, what you do in your current job is actually useful in your side hustle. So for instance, the fact that I've gone through however many 2 or 3 decades of having to work to a calendar that was originally like a file of facts and then it became Outlook or Lotus Notes or whatever it was. that actually is quite useful, even in a job like rigging, when you have to be at the job on time and organise yourself. And actually, you see, that's interesting. You see some of these young kids aren't used to that. So they're not used to having to plan their own work and get to a place and then make sure they're at that venue in time or whatever. So it works both ways.
Yeah. So what do you think then going forward? So you're now in version 2.1 or whatever it is of this portfolio career with the marketing work and the PT work going on. How do you feel about, again, what, not the future, a big question, but how do you feel about how this portfolio career might manifest itself or might, again, morph? What would you like it to look like?
Well, I would definitely like, my aim is to grow the PT business, but even within that, there becomes that element of that has sort of offshoots in terms of it then to training, coaching, but coaching coaches is another thing, because I've learned a lot in terms of how I've set up that as a mini business and how I work with people. Again, a lot of those skills have come from my main body of work. So that's one thing. I think you mentioned it before about the control, but also it's actually being very aware that having a number of different pots, let's say, or pies to put fingers into is potentially a bigger source of security. It's almost like having none of the things that I do are a passive income per se, but there are elements of them that sort of could become so. So you can put some coaching thing or some even PT sessions online. And again, to your point, having that control. So I think for me, it's about making it replicable and actually getting other people involved. So actually starting to work more with other people, because it can be quite lonely in terms of what you do and I do. I know we're always with people, so I'm me sort of on the PT side, it's more the physical side rather than the sort of the coaching and sort of emotional and intellectual side. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's still you, it's still your business, it's still me, it's still my business. So actually then sort of saying, even if it's not a partnership, but starting to work in like a collaboration. Whereas a lot of people might see that as, well, but that could potentially you're giving business or you're sharing business secrets with someone else. Well, actually, that rarely happens, because usually you just learn from other people and they're going after a different sector. So obviously you focus on parents, working parents. That's a real niche. So most people are probably just either going very generalist, or they're going for, it might be financial services executives. And I find that with PT, I tend to gravitate towards sort of slightly more white collar, older people who again are probably cash rich but time poor. Whereas a lot of the younger people I know who are also PTs, they're probably actually either doing really or quite high level sports coaching, or they're going for a younger sort of more fun British military fitness type group. So I think they almost sound like they're at opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's sort of proliferation but collaboration. So doing more yourself, but actually working with other people to do it.
Yeah. And what do you think your kids, they're older, obviously they're starting into their working lives now, do you think their generation, from what you know of it and what you know of them, are going to be more portfolio career minded?
Without a doubt. Certainly one is studying to go to art college. The other one, as I said, is just started her career, just finished at RADA and started her career as a sound and video engineer. But she already works for different companies, so she's sort of gone down a freelance route for the moment. She's looking. She may well take up an apprenticeship with one of the bigger companies she's working with. But I think they do accept that because they've seen that. They've seen it happen to us with our generation, and also that this is sort of the bigger malaise with young people. They probably, I mean, you've heard lots of commentators talk about this. They almost don't see a point to working the 9 to 5, or probably 9 till 7. You know, the the very hard, intense job, because you're not getting a reward for it at the moment.
Yeah.
That social contract's almost been broken, because you can see you've got people who come out of university, aren't getting really well paid jobs. Even if they do, they're working their backsides off and they still can't afford to buy a house. So I think they're sort of thinking, so they're either, I don't think they're saying I don't want to work. What they're saying is I'm going to work under my own terms. Differently. And it might be that I accept less as reward, but I'm going to be happier. Yes, I think they're definitely going to be on board with it.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's going to evolve again through the generations. And as you said, mental health being such an important, one of the obviously most talked about things, as it should be these days, and how that portfolio approach can actually help with that balance, help with that mental health, help with actually doing something that you enjoy and you're getting satisfaction and fulfillment out of, rather than assuming that you have to stay in one job, one career path, one way of working for the rest of your life.
Exactly. That's a really nice twist on it, because that's the way it's usually presented, there is less job security. Okay, there possibly is, because you can't rely on one job taking you all the way through from sort of 25 to 65. But the opportunity there to be more fulfilled is much bigger, because it would then be accepted. So if you chopped and changed every 4 or 5 years, it wouldn't be regarded as a bad thing. It's just a case of you're just trying something different. Yeah.
And transferring their skills.
Yeah,
you're gaining everything along the way, not losing anything. With all
absolutely, you are amassing different skills, and you're using it to other people, other organisations' benefit.
Lily, before we wrap up, then, for anyone listening, well, I imagine they're listening because of portfolio careers, I would have thought, who is thinking about this, taking this step into variety, into a portfolio, into kind of mixing things up, potentially that haven't done that before or been in a career for a long time, what is probably the first sensible step to take?
I think you've got to do your research. You clearly need to know that it was sort of forced upon me, but with the redundancies, it's like I was saying, you have time and you have money, which is a good thing. So if you are hopefully in the position where it's not actually just thrown at you, then you need to do your research. Make sure you're going to be okay for money to be able to keep going, and then plan how you upscale your side hustle, your portfolio, your new career, and down at the same time as downscaling. And it might only be that you only ever get to a 90%, 10% mix. It might be that within 6 months you've gone 50-50 or 100% the new thing. So I think that's planning that like that. Also, I would definitely look at upskilling whilst you're still in that main job. So I had to study for the PT exam, which was about actually constructing gym sessions, but going back to basics, revisiting a lot about health and safety, about physiology, about nutrition. So that was eye-opening. Even if I never pursued it as a career or used it in any way, just having relearned that, and the process of relearning was really good. And then I would also reach out to people. So this idea of collaboration, reach out to people who have done it or who may be full-time in that area that you're looking at, and just ask them how they did it, how they find it. So a lot of it is about research and planning. But then the other thing is just make sure it's something you enjoy. There's no point saying, okay, well, there's lots of money in AI software development, I'm going to try and do that. Because that for me, that's never for me. I've never been a tech head. If you love that sort of thing, then do it. But you can't force yourself into something just because you think it's going to remunerate you well. And the other thing is as well is don't almost going against what I said here in terms of do your research, but also just jump into it as well. Give it a go. Try it once you've done that research, just dive into it, and don't get away from that imposter syndrome, because everyone has to start somewhere in any job or any activity they do, and you soon build up your own sort of career personality. That's the thing that I find. You can't be unique. So you can't be. So for me, I'll give you the PT example. I'm not Joe Wicks. I'm like the grumpy old git version of Joe Wicks. Not that I'm grumpy with people, but it's just, I'm not going to come up with a sort of squeaky voice and get kids jumping. It's slightly more sort of measured, because I know how these people are feeling, because I know that I've got bad knees, they've got bad knees, they've got injuries to recover from, they've got to, plan it around their working day. So just be honest as well, that it's something that you enjoy, something you can do well, but also that you are going to make mistakes, and it's going to take a little while to learn.
Yeah, I love that career personality.
Yeah, I think also in your main job as well, that you can't. Sometimes I think people are in industries and they think, well, everyone or the industry is perceived as being like this. But actually, you're still a series of individuals, and you should all be different. So it's back to that sort of psychometric test, is 16PF. Organisations work better when there are a mix of people. So just be true to yourself, as they say.
As they say. Thank you so much, Lee. And
Pleasure.
Where's the best place to find out more about your PT business? Where can people find out more about your marketing business? So just tell us your.
So if you look for me on LinkedIn, Lee Witherell, Witherell on LinkedIn. So I'm also on LinkedIn as Visceral Fit. So VISCERALFIT. Visceral Fit. I have a LinkedIn page, but also visceralfit.com.
Cool.
If you visit that, there's some more information about what we do and how to contact me.
Perfect. Thank you. Inspiring stories. How much is possible if you just really take a leap of faith, I suppose. So good luck with the portfolio career.
Thank you very much.
And with the fitness in particular. And I will, we only live quite close together, and I could probably do some visceral fitness at some point. So
Brilliant.
I keep saying that, don't I? So thank you so much, Lee, for your time today.
Pleasure. Thank you, Aisha.
To work with me, find out more at aishamurray.com, connect with me on LinkedIn, or check out my free resources and quizzes at aishamurray.com/resources.